Morning, dear students. We are going to talk about the final block of the paper third, that is the British novel, my dear friends. And you see, in this block, we will be taking both of the books of your block fifth, and we will be talking about both of the books one by one. First of all, we will be talking about A Passage to India, that is by E.M. Forster, and here we will be analyzing the features and the specific qualities of, A Passage to India, and later on we will be talking about the different, the next book. A Passage to India, that was written in 1924, is a novel by English author E.M. Forster, set against the backdrop of the British Raj and the Indian independence movement in 1920s. So it basically talks about the British Raj in India and the Indian independence movement that took place in India and Indian subcontinent. So it was selected as one of the 100 great books of 20th century English literature by the Modern Library and won the 1924 James Tate Black Memorial Prize for Fiction. Time magazine included the novel in its 100 best English language novels from 1923 to 2005. So you see, this is a very good, very one of the very important books, and it has been featured in the top libraries, and it has been given a celebrated place in English literature. The novel is based on Forster's experiences in India, you see. This is a very important thing actually. The novel particularly is based on those experiences that Forster, gathered here. He collected those experiences in India. E.M. Forster borrowed the book's title from Walt Whitman's poem of the same name in Leaves of Grass. So, the title has been taken from Walt Whitman's poem. The title of, A Passage to India has been taken from Walt Whitman's poem. So, this is the feature, the special features of A Passage to India. It basically talks about the important things related to Indian independence movement and Indian subcontinent. The story revolves around four characters: Dr. Aziz, his British friend Mr. Cyril Fielding, Mrs. Moore, and Mrs. Adela. During a trip to the Maravar caves, modeled on the Baravar caves of Bihar, Adela finds herself alone with Dr. Aziz in one of the caves. Panics and flees. It is assumed that Dr. Aziz had attempted to assault her. So, it is basically a story actually. It is a kind of, conversation and communication, and it's a basically, a story of four important characters: Dr. Aziz, his British friend Mr. Cyril, Mrs. Moore, and Mrs. Adela. So, one of their excursions, they went outside, and it was understood that Dr. Aziz tried to assault Adela. So, this is how the story went actually. And Aziz's trial and its run-up and aftermath bring out all the racial tensions and prejudices between indigenous Indians and the British who rule India. So later on actually the trials and run-up and aftermath, so many things that happened actually, they created a kind of, a kind of anxiety and tensions. And that expressed that, prejudiced mindsets that is particularly found in the, in the minds of the rulers actually. So this is a kind of a story, and the relationship that is depicted here between the rules and between the ruled and the rulers. A young British schoolmistress, Adela. Here we go for the plot summary, my dear friends, and we will be trying to understand the story actually, because the plot will tell us what the exactly story is. A young British schoolmistress, Adela, and her elderly friend Mrs. Moore visit the fictional city of Chandrapur, British India. Adela is to decide if she wants to marry Mrs. Moore's son, Ronnie Heslop. the city magistrate. Meanwhile, Dr. Aziz, a young Indian Muslim physician, is dining with two of his Indian friends and conversing about whether it is possible to be a friend of an Englishman. So Mr. Aziz actually, who was their friend actually, so they were, all of them were talking actually, and you see he was asking a question, it is possible to be a friend of an Englishman. During the meal, a summons arrives from Major Calendar, Ajiz's unpleasant superior at the hospital. Aziz hastens to Calendar's bungalow as ordered but is delayed by a flat tire and difficulty in finding a tonga, and the major has already left in a huff. Disconsolate, Aziz walks down the road toward the railway station. When he sees his favorite mosque, he enters on impulse. He sees a strange English woman there and yells at her not to profane this secret place. This woman, Mrs. Moore, has respect for native customs. This disarms Aziz, and the two chat and part as friends. So later on actually, because when he saw Mrs. Moore there, and they started chit-chatting and they developed a kind of friendship between both of them, Mrs. Moore returns to the British Club down the road and relates her experience at the mosque. Mrs. Moore comes from that place and she goes to the British Club, and then actually she started relating her experiences that took place in mosques. Ronnie Hislop, her son, initially thinks she is talking about an Englishman and becomes indignant when he learns the facts. Ronnie, who was under different impression actually, and he thought that she was talking about an Englishman, but later on he became indignant after knowing the fact. Adela, however, is intrigued. Because the newcomers had expressed a desire to see Indians, Mr. Turton, the city tax collector, invites numerous Indian gentlemen to a party at his house. The party turns out to be an awkward business, thanks to the Indians' timidity and the Briton's bigotry. But Adela meets Cyril Fielding, headmaster of Chandrapur's government-run college for Indians. Fielding invites Adela and Mrs. Moore to a tea party with him and a Hindu Brahmin professor named Narayan Godbole. At Adela's request, he extends his invitation to Dr. Aziz. So actually, because of the newcomer desire, actually, a party was thrown and all the Indians were invited there. And you see different people started coming in the party. At Fielding's tea party, everyone has a good time, conversing about India. The tea party actually was so good, so people started talking about the different things related to India and related to the different parts of India. And people were having a very good time, and Fielding and Aziz becomes friends. And later on, you see, Fielding and Aziz become good friends. Aziz promises to take Mrs. Moore and Adela to see the Marabar caves. And it was the time actually, because of their friendship, and that friendship developed in a very good way, in a very good manner. So then actually Aziz promised to take Mrs. Moore and Adela to the Marabar caves, a distant cave complex. That was a very good place to visit actually. And Ronnie Hislop arrives and rudely breaks up the party. And in the meantime actually, Ronnie Hislop also came to the party, and he thought that it was not good party, and then he started breaking. Aziz mistakenly believes that the women are offended that he has not followed through on his promise, and arranges an outing to the caves at great expense to himself. And later on actually, Aziz mistakenly believed that the women there, they were offended because he did not follow his promise. So then actually he arranged an outing for them, and on his own actually all the expenditure incurred was taken care of, was carried out by him, and Fielding and Godbole were supposed to accompany the expedition, but they missed the train. And you see, it was the time when Fielding and Godbole were also about to come with them, but they could not come since they missed the train. Aziz and the women explore the caves. In the first cave, Mrs. Moore is overcome with claustrophobia, but worse than the claustrophobia is the echo. Disturbed by the sound, Mrs. Moore declines to continue exploring. Adela and Aziz, accompanied by a guide, climb to the next caves. You see, Mrs. Moore actually was not very happy by the echo and other things, and the atmospherical situations were also not favorable to her. Later on, she decided not to go further. But Adela expressed her desires to go further, and she went on. She went on. As Aziz helps Adela up the hill, she asks whether he has more than one wife. So Aziz and Adela started talking, and Adela asked whether he has more than one wife. Disconcerted by the bluntness of the remark, he ducks into a cave to compose himself. When he comes out, he finds the guide alone outside the caves. The guide says Adela has gone into a cave by herself. Aziz looks for her in vain, deciding she is lost. He strikes the guide, who runs away. Aziz looks around and discovers Adela's fiand glasses lying broken on the ground. He puts them in his pocket. Then Aziz looks down the hill and sees Adela speaking to another young English woman, Miss Derrick, who has arrived with Fielding in a car. Aziz runs down the hill and greets Fielding, but Miss Derrick and Adela drive off without explanation. Fielding, Mrs. Moore, and Aziz return to Chandrapur on the train. At the train station, Aziz is arrested and charged with sexually assaulting Adela in a cave. And it was very surprising for him. You see, at the train station, as soon as Aziz came, actually he was arrested and charged with sexually assaulting Adela in a cave. The run-up to his trial releases the racial tensions between the British and the Indians. Adela says that Aziz followed her into the cave and tried to grab her, and that she fended him off by swinging her field glasses at him. The only evidence the British have is the field glasses in the possession of Aziz. Despite this, the British colonists believe that Aziz is guilty. They are stunned when Fielding proclaims his belief in Aziz's innocence. Fielding is ostracized and condemned as a blood traitor. But the Indians, who consider the assault allegation a fraud, welcome him. So this is how the story goes actually, my dear friends. This is about, you see, the different kind of mindsets and the different situations that were there in the dependent India. People were not free actually. Here, you see, the story is very much clear. Aziz, who wanted to help them, and he arranged everything on his own expenses, and he took them on a very good journey and a very good excursion, and actually they tried to put him into a trouble, and they created a you see, havoc for him, and he was arrested and he was humiliated all over. So this is the plot of the story is actually, and you see, Passage to India. That is what is has been tried by the writer to express in this particular novel. And during the weeks before the trial, Mrs. Moore is apathetic and irritable, although she professes her belief in Aziz's innocence. She does nothing to help him. Ronnie, alarmed by his mother's assertion that Aziz is innocent, arranges for her return by ship to England before she can testify at the trial. Mrs. Moore dies during the boys. Her absence from India becomes a major issue at the trial, where Aziz's legal defenders assert that her testimony would have proven the accused's innocence. Adela becomes confused as to Aziz's guilt. At the trial, she is asked whether Aziz sexually assaulted her. She has a vision of the cave, and it turns out that Adela had, while in the cave, received a shock similar to Mrs. Moore's. The echo had disconcerted her so much that she became unhinged. At the time, Adila mistakenly interpreted her shock as an assault by Aziz. She admits that she was mistaken, and the case is dismissed. In the 1913 draft of the novel, E.M. Foster had Aziz guilty of the assault and found guilty in the court, but changed this in the 1924 draft to create a more ambiguous ending. Ronnie Heathlow breaks off their engagement. Adela stays at Fielding's house until her passage on a boat to England is arranged. After explaining to Fielding that the echo was the cause of the whole business, she departs India never to return. Although he is vindicated, Aziz is angry that Fielding befriended Adela after she nearly ruined his life. You see, Aziz is angry that Fielding befriended Adela after she nearly ruined his life. And Adela, because of Adela, you see, that fellow was also not very happy. Believing it to be the gentlemanly thing to do, Fielding convinces Aziz not to seek momentary redress for her. And the man's friendship suffers, and Fielding departs for England. Aziz also believes that he is leaving to marry Adela for her money. Bitter at his friend's perceived betrayal, he vows never again to befriend a white person. Aziz moves to the Hindu-ruled state of Mao and begins a new life. 2 years later, Fielding returns to India. His wife is Stella, Mrs. Moore's daughter from a second marriage. Aziz, now the Raja's chief physician, comes to respect and love Fielding again. However, he does not give up his dream of a free and united India. In the novel's last sentences, he explains that he and Fielding cannot be friends until India is free of the British Raj. So, you see, that is the inner desire actually, that is the inner understanding that comes out, you see. And there actually he very clearly says that it is not possible because there is a lot of difference, there is a lot of distances, there are a lot of distances, and that actually do not allow them to meet actually. There is a thinking difference, there is a difference of generations actually that doesn't allow them to meet and that come closer. So that was expressed by him. Now we would like to talk about the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark, my dear friends. And this is another novel that is prescribed, my dear friends, in our block 5th. So here we go for the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie is a novel by novelist Muriel Spark, the best known of her works. It first saw publication in the New Yorker magazine and was published as a book by Macmillan in 1961. So, as we were talking, my dear friends, the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie is a best-known work by Muriel Spark actually, and it was first of all published in New Yorker magazine, and later on it was published in a book form by Macmillan in 1961. The character of Miss Jean Brodie brought Spark international fame and brought her into the first rank of contemporary Scottish literature. So, you see, the character of Miss Jean Brodie brought Spark international fame. Because of this character, you see, Muriel became very famous, and she got the international repute and all, and brought her into the first rank of contemporary Scottish literature. And in the literature of Scotland, she became one of the important figures because of this single important character. In 2005, the novel was chosen by Time magazine as one of the 100 best English language novels from 1923 to present. In 1998, the Modern Library ranked the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie at 76th number on its list of the 100 best English language novels of the 20th century. So this was the popularity actually of this novel. It was given a very important and the significant place in English literature because of its elements and the characterization and the subject matter and you see the plot. In 1930s, the Edinburgh 6 10-year-old girls, Sandy Rose, Mary, Zanny, Monica, and Eunice are assigned Miss Jean Brodie, who describes herself as being in my prime as teacher. Miss Brodie determined that they shall receive an education in the original sense of the Latin verb educere, to lead out, gives her students lessons about her personal love life and travels, promoting art, history, classical studies, and fascism. Under her mentorship, these 6 girls, whom Brodie singles out as the elite group among her students, known as the Brodie set, begin to stand out from the rest of the school. However, in the one of the novel's typical flash forwards, we learn that one of them will later betray Brodie, ending her teaching career, but that she will never learn which. In the junior school, they meet the singing teacher, the short Mr. Gordon Lowther, and the art master, the handsome, one-armed war veteran Mr. Teddy Lloyd, a married Roman Catholic with 6 children. These 2 teachers form a love triangle with Miss Brodie, each loving her while she loves only Mr. Lloyd. However, Miss Brodie never overtly acts on her love for Mr. Lloyd, except once to exchange a kiss with him, witnessed by Monica. During a 2-week absence from school, Miss Brodie embarks on an affair with Mr. Lowther on the grounds that a bachelor makes a more respectable paramour. She has renounced Mr. Lloyd as he is married. At one point during these 2 years in the junior school, Jenny is accosted by a man joyfully exposing himself beside the water of Leith. The police investigation of the exposure leads Sandy to imagine herself as part of a fictional police force seeking incriminating evidence in respect of Brodie and Mr. Lowther. Once the girls are promoted to the senior school, around at the 12 A's, though now dispersed, they hold on to their identity as the Brodie set. Miss Brodie keeps in touch with them after school hours by inviting them to her home, as she did when they were her pupils. All the while, the headmistress, Miss Mackay, tries to break them up and compile information gleaned from them into sufficient cause to sack Brodie. Miss Mackay has more than once suggested to Miss Brodie that she should seek employment at a progressive school. Miss Brodie declines to move to what she describes as a crank school. When 2 other teachers at the school, the Kerr sisters, take part-time employment as Mr. Lowther's housekeepers, Miss Brodie tries to take over their duties. She sets about fattening him with extravagant cooking. The girls, now 13, visit Miss Brodie in pairs at Mr. Lowther's house, where all Brodie does is ask about Mr. Lloyd in Mr. Lowther's presence. At this point, Mr. Lloyd asks Rose and occasionally the other girls to pose for him as portrait subjects. Each face he paints ultimately resembles Miss Brodie, as her girls report to her in detail, and she thrills at the twirling. One day when Sandy is visiting Mr. Lloyd, he kisses her. Before the Brodie set turns 16, Miss Brodie tests her girls to discover which of them she can really trust, ultimately settling on Sandy as her confidant. Miss Brodie is obsessed with the notion that Rose, as the most beautiful of the Brodie set, should have an affair with Mr. Lloyd in her place. She begins to neglect Mr. Lothar, who ends up marrying Miss Lockhart, the science teacher. Another student, Joyce Emily, steps briefly into the picture, trying unsuccessfully to join the Brodie set. Miss Brodie takes her under her wing separately, encouraging her to run away to fight in the Spanish Civil War on the nationalist side, which she does, only to be killed in an accident when the train she is traveling in is attacked. Spark unfolds her plots not sequentially, but piece by piece, making extensive use of the narrative technique of prolepsis. For example, the reader is aware early on that Miss Brodie is betrayed, though this actually happens at the end of the girls' school years. Gradually, Spark reveals the betrayer, and lastly, all the details surrounding the event are told. Spark develops her characters in this way too. Joyce Emily is introduced right away as the girl who is rejected from the Brodie set. With this technique, the narrator of the story is omniscient and timeless, relating the entire plot all at once. As far as the structure is concerned, Spark creates deep characterizations which are realistic in their human imperfections. Hal Hazer, in his commentary on the novel, writes of Sandy and Miss Brodie, the complexity of these two characters especially. Jean Brodie mirrors the complexity of human life. Jean Brodie is genuinely intent on opening up her girls' lives, on heightening their awareness of themselves and their world, and on breaking free of restrictive conventional ways of thinking, feeling, and being. The character of Miss Jean Brodie was based in part on Christiana Kay, a teacher of Spark's for 2 years at James School for Girls. Spark would later write of her, "What filled our minds with wonder and made Christiana Kay so memorable was the personal drama and poetry within which everything in her classroom happened." Miss Kay was the basis for the good parts of Brodie's character, but also some of the more bizarre. For example, Miss Kay did hang posters of Renaissance paintings on the wall, but also of Benito Mussolini and Italian fascists marching. So this was the inspiration from his school life that he tried to explain in this particular novel, and the whole inspiration came from, you see, his childhood memories. Hope you have got the idea. Thank you.